This video is sponsored by Incogni. More on that later. We've been here before. I made this Pikachu in February, but I didn't do the best job of bringing him to life. So I set myself a deadline to learn a plethora of new skills to try to do this fan favorite justice.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty cute.
I wanted to prove to myself that I could accomplish this challenge.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
I just happened to decide this a month before my favorite convention, and we all know how that goes. So let's talk about the main objectives for this build. I needed to improve on my last design. The first major flaw in Pikachu V1 was that his eyes were scary. They were too matte, too dark, and too round. He looked like he had seen some things. The second was his fur, too long and too crazy looking. His fur prevented a lot of movement too, since it had no stretch to it. Movement. He was very robotic looking. It was giving possessed teddy bear vibes. And lastly, his overall figure. He was a little rotund. He just didn't look like Pikachu, which is a pretty major issue. So let's fix that. I started out with the sculpt of Pikachu I found on CG Trader. It was a low poly animation rig model that I was able to convert into just a sculpted Blender model. After doing some smoothing and editing of facial features so he resembled Detective Pikachu a little bit better, I started adjusting his expression and body position. The idea was that this would be used to make molds for the skin, so I wanted the mouth to be open and the arms in a position that would hopefully relieve some stress on the foam latex. Spoiler alert, the arms were in the wrong position for that, but we'll talk about that later. Once the sculpt was ready, I broke it up into 6 pieces, 2 ears, 2 arms, the body, and the head. I then loaded these up on my printers for making Ultra Cal molds of them later. In the meantime, I got started on one of the bigger issues of Pikachu V1, the eyes. In order to get the best result for these eyes, I invested in a pressure pot. You can get these on Amazon pre-made and ready to go for resin casting, but I decided to be cheap and got a pressure pot made for paint, and I converted it for casting. I used the exact same method I did for Pikachu V1, except this time I used a lighter brown for the eyes, and I painted a bit less so he had more white in his eyes. Adding metallic highlights aided in the shine as well. I then poured my resin into their molds, and this time made sure to heat it to release bubbles and make sure it was a bit more liquidy. Then I loaded these into the pressure pot to sit for 2 days. Remember how I said I converted the pot myself? Yeah, you could tell. The air leaked the entire time, but somehow it still came out really good. With just a bit of wet sanding, buffing, and polishing, these eyes were beautiful. This Pikachu is free from the horrors the first version had to experience. So we have really shiny eyeballs. I'm actually really surprised that these came out successful because the pressure chamber or pressure pot was leaking air. And we had to keep refilling it, but it actually worked out okay. There's not a single bubble. Actually, there are very small bubbles that I just noticed. Like there's like 2 of them. So you're not gonna be able to tell, but they're nearly perfect. Okay, so now what I've been doing is I've been sculpting a Pikachu over here. I've been sculpting a Pikachu. So this is the head. This is before I scaled it up a little bit, but the idea is that we're gonna make a mold of all these different body parts, and then we're going to create a mother mold and put the foam latex inside of that and then bake it in a foldable camping oven.
Yeah.
Wait. What's happening? Before you get too confused, let me break it down for you. Here's some of the materials and processes I'm going to be using in this build. Ultra Cal is a porous stone-like material that starts out in a powder form. You add water and spread the material around the item you need to make a mold or cast of. I use this in all of my molds and in my underskull casts, since foam latex needs to be baked and it helps wick moisture away. The underskull casts are basically negatives of the Pikachu sculpt that help set the skin thickness of the foam latex skin. Without this critical piece, the Pikachu would just be a solid mass of foam latex. Different mold types can be used, but for this build I use 2 and 3 part molds. A 2-part mold opens in half, and a 3-part mold splits up into 3 pieces. It all depends on how detailed your piece is and how the parts need to fit together. Foam latex is a spongy, stretchy, popular alternative to silicone for animatronics that is mixed in a mixing bowl and then baked in molds to create skins and prosthetics. I'll talk more about this process later. Now that info is out of the way, let's talk about the task at hand.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do foam latex, so this is going to be an interesting experiment. So this was before when I thought I had to use like silicone inside of the Ultra Cal. Then we went to Reynolds Advanced Materials and they were like, just use Ultra Cal. So then if you look over here, we have a bunch of molds. So I'm going kind of a lazy route and I just printed them in halves, and this will be the Ultra Cal underskull mold. So these will be like clamped together. and we'll fill this with ultracal, and that'll be the underskull for the torso. Same thing with all these parts. They just get closed up and filled, so we can bake the underskull inside of the mold. These will be the skin molds. So we'll build an ultracal mother mold over this, you know, with the seam and everything and the keys. This underskull will fit into that mold, and we'll just bake it in that oven.
Huh.
Yeah. It's like a whole science experiment, except it cost me like $300.
Yeah.
So hopefully it works out. I've got the foam latex coming today, and we're just gonna like figure it out. I don't know what I'm doing, but that's what makes it fun, right? It's fun.
Before we get into making ultracal molds, let's hear a few words from our sponsor, Incogni.
Hi, is this Kira's workshop?
Yeah.
Just to confirm, your address is 123 Electric Lane, your favorite food is cheeseburgers, and your dog's name is Pikachu?
I have never met this man in my life. Nowadays, there's a lot of personal information being sold online. Stuff like your home address, email address, phone number, financial information, even your YouTube habits. Creepy? Yeah. That's because data brokers scrape your information and sell it to whoever they want to.
Like this guy, for example.
Hi, I was wondering if you were interested in purchasing a Pikachu protection plan.
No. They get your number from data brokers. Incogni helps you delete it. Data brokers can basically create profiles based on your information and sell it to a lot of different marketers. Incogni helps to contact these people and request your information be deleted, like your phone number. I didn't sign up for that. Incogni automatically contacts them and requests that they delete that information. And the best part is that it's completely automated and you don't have to do anything. Now, just like NordVPN services, Incogni is completely risk-free for the first 30 days, which means you can try it, and if you're unhappy with the service, you can get a full refund. Make sure you use code Kira on the website below in my description for 60% off your first year of Incogni. Back to the video.
Now that the mold shells were printed in the background of all this, I prepped them for the ultracal. Ultracal is basically a porous stone that is super cheap to use for mold making and can capture tiny details. However, it is decently fragile, so you need a structural element when making molds with it. I used burlap to strengthen the molds and just Vaseline from the store to prevent it from sticking to the 3D prints.
Looks like flour.
The only baseline is a smooth consistency and no clumps.
It took a few tries to get the molds to even be usable. It needed a solid lip with keys to make sure the parts aligned properly, and the inner piece needed to be perfectly centered in the jacket to make sure the skin was an even thickness. We definitely did not achieve this, but we got it to a good enough state for our first try. I had to seriously mod and sand some of these molds, and it was extremely messy.
You can really see that.
Once these were cured, I baked them out to get rid of excess moisture and prep them for casting. Look at my beautiful and not janky at all oven setup. It's definitely not a folding camping oven with a $5 hot plate underneath it. Yeah, I used a folding camping oven to cook my foam latex. That's the situation. It's jank, I know, but it's what I had on hand.
Right now it's about 75 degrees, we got 37% humidity. We're gonna measure everything on the scale, and then we found a perfect little Facebook Marketplace mixer. Yeah, and then this is our jank oven that we saw earlier. And we're just gonna try our best. Yeah, I really don't know what I'm doing. Which isn't like the best.
It's cheaper than silicone, easier to glue, and most importantly for this use case, it can be flocked very easily. However, foam latex can be very tricky to use since it needs to be carefully mixed in certain intervals using a specific type of mixing bowl at a certain temperature and humidity with very precise amounts of ingredients. It also needs to be baked inside of stone molds that can wick away moisture and not melt in the oven. It also emits a ton of fumes and it's super easy to mess up. What can go wrong?
What even happened?
It gelled too fast.
Running foam latex is one of the most stressful things I have ever done. My heart was running a 5K at all times during the mixing process.
It was chaos. It's in the oven. We managed to actually get it in the molds right before it gelled because it gelled instantly again. but the instructions also say take a minute away from the deammoniation step, which is at speed 4. Ammoniation.
Ammonianization.
But for now, we're just making sure this doesn't set on fire. We got about an hour 30 left, and we'll see what happens, but not confident that it's gonna work out.
We actually had some great success with our first test though.
Strike while the mold is hot. It honestly doesn't feel bad. This seems like it's uncured right here.
Uncured?
Or like not set up properly.
This could be like a what's it called?
The
heat pocket. Steam
lake.
Steam lake, yeah. Take his glove off.
I'm trying. I don't want to rip him. Oh my god.
Skin. Are we accidental geniuses?
It is kind of thin right here. Like look at once we cut this down, you'll see like it's very, very thin right here. We'll want to redo this again just because it's like our first test. But this is not bad. This is actually a good flocking practice.
That's better than I thought it was going to come out.
Oh my god.
It's super weird because our first test went so well, and then we had a period of just absolutely horrible runs that left us questioning everything. Eventually, we did find some success though.
Oh yeah, yes, he has a face.
I prioritized the skin for sure since I knew I had experience with the robot side of things. I started with Bot Tango and I carefully mapped out the servo positioning inside of my structure, and once everything was rigged up, I was able to start animating my robot. Believe it or not, this was actually the easiest part of this build. Don't get me wrong, it was still tricky, but given what I had just put in the oven before I started doing this, I'd much rather be playing with servos than a folding camping oven.
Okay, so now what we're gonna be doing is starting to assemble the actual robot part. Now, I'm gonna start with the neck, like the neck base, and work myself up. Now, the really cool part about doing this while I have the Bot Tango model all rigged up is that I can plug my board directly into my laptop and actually like direct the motors while I assemble this. So I can make sure everything's in the correct position, and I can make sure that I'm assembling it correctly the first time. Because last time I had to like disassemble everything and reposition all the servos, and that was really annoying. So this should be much faster than last time, just work a lot better in general. I optimized all of my different boards so that they are compatible with Bot Tango. So we're just gonna get into it.
Enjoy this montage of me assembling and testing mechanical parts.
Alright, so we're nearing completion. The only thing we have to do is install the cable pulleys, which will be these two spots right here, the lips, the eyebrows, and the ears. This is a cable that's in like a tube, and so that way you can attach this to the end of a servo and it can push and pull whatever is at the end of this cable. Now we're gonna run the tubing up through here so it goes through this hole and attaches to these spring-loaded earpieces. And so that'll basically create the push and pull and move the ears. This is way more simplified compared to like my last version, but it's literally just a push-pull cable and a spring ear.
Oh, he's grabbing you!
Now this is where the actual magic happens. Now that we had all the components done, it was time to fuse them together in a way that looked like Pikachu. This is also where all the video recording stopped because I was so panicked about making the deadline that I couldn't record anything, so I'll come up with some fun way to show you. I stuck all of the skin on the robot with a glue called Telesis 8. This was tedious because if you glued it wrong, the robot may move unnaturally. I then used Prozade and colored it a bit more of an orange color for the base color of the foam latex. Then I covered it with Prozade again, and I waited until it was tacky to start the flocking process.
I guess we just go for it, right? I guess so. I feel like that's the policy. It's just like, let's just go for it. It's the theme of the entire thing. I can see it kind of.
At this point, I had one of the hardest crash outs of my entire life. I swear I literally cried so hard that both my ears popped. I almost threw this entire build in the trash because the fur I had glued onto his body didn't match the flocking well enough. It looked horrible. This was the night before C2E2 as well, so if I didn't get this done, I just would not make it. Luckily, Nick came over and saved me from myself, and we used an airbrush and acrylic paint to sort of blend the seams together and make it look a bit more natural. Shout out to Nick. Now it was just time for his iconic final touches.
So scary. Given the time frame, I do think what I did in the time frame was impressive-ish. One of the things I wasn't totally happy about was the arms. They can move. What I wanted was more of a relaxed position, like forward, because any kind of Pokemon video you see, his arms are kind of forward. But I thought, like, when I originally sculpted the model, I thought having his arms in like the most strenuous position would be beneficial because it would relieve tension, but that doesn't make sense if he's only going for short bursts and then he puts him back down in resting position. So this has become his default resting position, which I'm not necessarily happy with. I know what went wrong, but it's like I have to redo all of this, and that kind of makes me sad.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to do about him, or upgrade, was his mouth. When you see him talk, there's like yellow plastic in his mouth, and you can it looks weird, and that's the robot underneath.
You can see his skull.
Yeah, you can see his like
your skull
skeleton.
Is showing, Queen.
I did buy silicone. I was gonna mold and cast a like mouth and a tongue, so when he opened his mouth, you would see like a normal looking mouth.
Yeah.
There's a few clips of him talking, and you could probably see it in this video too, where it looks a little strange because you can see the plastic. Another thing I didn't have time to do was give him like any kind of controller system. He can only do this idle animation just because I didn't have time to like wire up a controller. I wanted to do like a Bluetooth Pokeball with like half of it cut out and like little buttons so I could trigger different animations, but just getting this animation done and everything else done in like the month before C2E2 was a freaking marathon, so that didn't happen. That's an upgrade I want to do. Yeah, I mean, he was received really well. We went to the Smooth On booth at C2E2 because we got a lot of help from the Smooth On store. Or no, that was the Reynolds Advanced Materials booth.
Yeah, but they
work with Smooth On.
Yeah.
And we stopped by to like show them the final result because we had talked to them in the store and told them the deadline, and they were like, "Wow, that's a pretty crazy thing to try to do." So we got to show them, and there was a guy there who will plug his information, who works in the industry, and he was really impressed with like our first run at foam latex, and basically said like a lot of people in the industry don't even do it this well on their first try or even with experience. So we either got really lucky or we really learned an important skill.
Yeah.
V1 looks like he's seen some things, but this guy's he's cute.
I'm just recording, I'll crop later.
Oh my god, he looks so good!
Overall, I think this was a steep and pretty successful accomplishment, and I made my goal deadline of C2E2. I redeemed myself, and I learned a ton of new skills. Now it's on to the next crazy animatronic project.